Thank you. You hear the panelists talk a lot about the Sacramento News Review. They wasn't able to join us today, but they gave us a statement. They're only able to stay in business and avoid layoffs strictly due to the medical marijuana dispensary advertising dollars. And this economy especially wants to acknowledge their statement of the economic impact of this issue, since it's been mentioned by our panelists. So they did, send a statement saying they were only able to stay in business like they were because of the advertising dollars. So with question 4, how would the closures of the medical cannabis dispensaries affect law enforcement resources? Will this increase or decrease the need for law enforcement? Could these resources be directed better towards other crimes?
This one might need more than 2 minutes. So it definitely affects law enforcement. The areas that collectives, number one, were in, they are not prime real estate. So someone who has prime real estate is not going to rent to a collective. They know it is, possibility. It's not a sure thing. So these are the businesses, the buildings that were maybe in blighted neighborhoods that had transients in those areas that aren't, the best neighborhoods. We have done interviews while the collectives were open with the neighbors around the collectives to ask the collectives, ask the neighbors, do you like the collective being there? Have they increased security in your neighborhood? And overwhelmingly we heard yes. We heard one pastor of a church say, I want the collective there because when the collective wasn't there, there were people shooting up, there was needles, there was trash. They have security cameras, they have security lighting, they have security guards. Crime, according to the police department itself, has went up around the collectives. There was a big study done when they shut down all the collectives down in LA by the Rand Corporation, a big research company that said crime does go up when collectives close. So that is a fact. And let's see. Resources can definitely be directed in other areas. Medical cannabis is not going to go away. People need it. They use it for a variety of reasons. Right now, what we're doing by closing the collective is putting people who are ill, people who are elderly, in bad situations with people that they don't know, in unsafe situations, in parking lots, in alleys. God knows where. I've had patients crying when we close Common Roots, just crying and crying. Old women, people in wheelchairs, crying, saying, they don't understand what's going to happen to us. We are going to use this herb because we can't use the standard pharmaceuticals, and we have to get it however we can get it. So resources could definitely be used somewhere else, and this has drastically affected thousands of people, and it's very sad.
When I was working, I arrested dozens of people for DUI. Not a single one was under the influence of marijuana. Every single one of them was under the influence of alcohol or some other drug, but not marijuana. I can tell you that from a legal standpoint, the majority of the problems that I dealt with as an officer were not generated by marijuana. Perhaps by someone who may have conducted a burglary in order to get money for that, for marijuana, but not by the marijuana itself. If you close marijuana dispensaries, you're going to take a lot of people who are accustomed to buying things in a very sterile environment, and you're going to force them to go purchase them in an environment of danger, in an environment that is inherently illegal, inherently dangerous because it is clandestine, because people are trying to keep it out of the eyes of law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't have enough resources today to deal with the stuff that they have to deal with, period. And now you're going to close the dispensaries and multiply tenfold, 100-fold the amount of what law enforcement would classify as trafficking activities having to do with marijuana. I think that the resources could absolutely be better redirected towards things like thieves stealing copper from schools or stealing copper from senior citizens, air conditioning, serious burglaries, serious crimes, real gang crimes. Those could be hit a lot harder if we didn't have to deal with this new vacuum of new marijuana issues.
Thank you. So the closure of the dispensaries really isn't the local businesses near the dispensary were actually very supportive. When they had security for the dispensary, that basically gave security for the local businesses surrounding it too. It's just a well-known fact. I have to ditto what Kimberly said. When the dispensaries or collectives leave the neighborhood, crime goes up. And the Rand McNally study showed that. We certainly could be using our resources a lot differently. I know, not for a fact, but secondhand, that up in Northern California, the Mexican cartels drop off kids and their families are held hostage back at home. And they go run up into the hills and camp for months and months and watch over these crops. And unfortunately, there are hikers and people hiking in the woods that stumble across these and get, unfortunately, killed. But it's just unfortunate. Some of our resources could probably go towards cutting off the cartels coming into California. Seems pretty easy for them. And we just don't hear a lot about the cartels in Northern California getting prosecuted. So I'd like to see a little bit more resources taken towards that and keep Californians safe.
I have a lot to say about security. Neighborhoods with dispensaries are much more secure. Every dispensary I know of has running cameras. The medicine's being dispensed under camera. The outside's being dispensed by cameras. They have people patrolling the neighborhoods. The Rand McNally study showed that crime does drop. But aside from all the obvious things about our security helping the neighborhoods, it also brings those black market dollars into the mainstream and takes away money from the enemies of the police, who would use this for weapons to fight the police and to use this to do other illegal things that the police have to deter. And then aside from that, there's the time that the police officers have to waste trying to figure out if someone's a patient, trying to bust them, and do all these things when if we had a more, if it wasn't such a cannaphobic climate, they could, look at and see it's a medical cannabis case and just move on to something more serious. We're not just choosing to be more secure or because the perception that we're at risk of being attacked or robbed, but the city has codified into their ordinance that we have to take certain security measures, and we have to, so it's not even a matter of choice. Every dispensary in the city of Sacramento that's left, the 25 or so, have to follow certain security protocols, have to turn into the police themselves their security protocols. And I think it's pretty clear that medical marijuana is beneficial, and then the taxes that we raise go into the public fund and go to help the police.
I think Ron pretty well summed that up, because that is the absolute truth, without even a doubt. Back in 2005, my door was a revolving door. I constantly had patients coming in with police encounters, and that was because at that time the police weren't even educated on the difference between medical and how to even make those stands. We've come a long ways from that. Our police officers are our friends. They are there to protect the patients, and they are not there to harass the patients. By taking the patients out of the equation and putting it into the black market, you make the patient a criminal. Therefore, you increase law enforcement's work. So instead of being out there catching the rapists, the murderers, the car thieves, they're out there harassing the patient. And they don't want to be. That is not what they want to do for their jobs. That's not what we want to have them do. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. We have already taken some stances to go forward. Law enforcement is our friend, not our enemy, and they will continue to be so as we go forward. I'm not going to repeat everything Ron said because he was right as far as dispensaries keep crime down. It's been said over and over and over, including here in the city of Sacramento. Chief Brazil himself has stated publicly twice that anywhere around a dispensing collective, crime is down. Thank you.
Taking a slightly different tack on this, let's talk about how law enforcement is actually funded. At the city level, the government is funded principally by property and sales taxes. That's also true for the county level. The state is where we change that equation. We're actually looking more at income taxes as being the most substantial form of funding. So when we have a robust local business economy, whether that's in the city or whether that's in the county, that sales tax revenue, those property tax revenues that are being now paid by a landlord who has a tenant who's paying them on a monthly basis, contribute to the county or city's economy, which allows them to go out and hire additional law enforcement resources. It also allows them to expand and continue to grow jails. You've probably heard a little bit about realignment lately, where we're moving prisoners from the state system that is so overtaxed, not to use a bad pun, sorry, so overpopulated right now that we're literally under federal receivership and we're pushing prisoners from the system. What we realized along the way in doing that was that the county system was not prepared to receive all of these additional inmates. And so we have county jails that are woefully unprepared to receive thousands of inmates. We're going through a ridiculous exercise, because this was all done at the last minute, to try and retrofit these facilities, and you've probably seen some of this play out in the papers. So one of the questions we need to ask is, how could we improve the economy so that we have the resources for law enforcement, for prison facilities, and for re-education and re-entry? Because the flip side of that is, once somebody has served their prison time, then we want to be sure that they have an opportunity to become productive, positive citizens going forward. What we have lost in the last few years is the dollars that are attributed to rehabilitation. We can almost call the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation the California Department of Corrections, because they're just incarcerated. And this is from the rehabilitation folks. They want to see more dollars going into rehabilitation programs, because we've proven that when we push dollars into those programs, they actually work. Whatever we need to do to improve the economy so that we're having a more robust climate, so that we have more local revenue for cities, more local revenue for counties, that will help the state have more revenue as well, and we can see funding for some of these programs that we're seeing cut right now.